All right, everybody, welcome. Apologies, we have a slight delay in getting started, but we are here for our Community Engagement Committee meeting. The chair of our committee, Vice Chair Monica Johnson-Hostler, is unable to attend today for a professional work conflict. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get us started. First, we'll have a review of the minutes, we'll take a vote, and then I'll turn everything over to Dr. Robinson and his staff for the rest of our committee agenda. So has anyone ever had an opportunity to review the minutes?
Yeah, motion to approve the August 13th community engagement meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Swanson, a second from Ms. Mahaffey. All in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes have been adopted. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Dr. Robinson. We have a great agenda talking about the community mapping initiative and then some of the family school relationship survey results. So whenever you're ready, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Haggerty and esteemed board members. As Chair Haggerty shared, we have two desired outcomes for our Community Engagement Committee meeting this afternoon. The first one is to receive an update of the WCPSS Community Mapping Initiative, and that's going to be done by Dr. Brooksy Sturdivant. We've allocated 30 minutes for that. And then we're going to review the 2024 Panorama Family School Relationship Survey results as well. And within that particular survey, we've allocated 70 minutes so that we can go a little bit more in depth and provide opportunities for everyone to ask clarifying questions. That is going to be led by Dr. Kim Burton and Dr. Leanne Alford-Keefe. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Brooksy Sturdivant to really begin the work on the Community Mapping Initiative and be able to share that information.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update today. So as you know, we launched our mapping initiative titled Put Yourself on the Map. We're wanting our community organizations to join us in our efforts. So this is a huge part of the STRAT plan. We wanted to find a central location for all of that information. As mentioned before, this has traditionally been handled school by school. So having this at central services at a centralized location was the key goal here. So I've been working with our geospatial analytics department to develop the mapping tool, and I'm super excited to say it is now available on Wake Connect. So I do want to pause and give you a moment to access that if you have your device and would like to take a look at what our staff will actually access. So through Wake Connect, is located under Workspaces, and from there, under our Offices and Programs column, which is the first column on the left, you scroll down to choose Community Engagement. Then once you select that one, you will come to our community engagement landing page. And there you'll find a section for resources. And we currently have the two, and the second one is the mapping tool. Everybody able to access it?
Got to Wake Connect and then what?
You have to go over to,
You'll, under Workspaces, and then our first column is Offices and Programs. You scroll down just a little to the C's, Community Engagement,
Yep.
and that'll get you to the Community Engagement landing page, and then under Resources. Right, and once you click that particular resource, you'll find a description of the initiative. And if you continue to scroll down, it gets you to the terms of use, because we really want users to just understand a few protocols and expectations for using the tool, because we do have to be mindful of the organizations, ensuring that they're not too inundated. So just a little bit about the terms of use. We definitely want to keep this for internal use. So again, it's housed in Wake Connect so that all the Wake County Public Schools staff can access it. We're definitely going to be sharing this with school administrators and our counseling and student services departments, because we really think it'll be a valuable tool for social workers, counselors, and those in our schools who are helping students and families directly. So I'll definitely be making efforts over the next few months to make sure those groups know how to use the tool. So part of the terms of use emphasizes that it is for internal use. And to access it, you do have to be on the network. So that's another part of just trying to keep it secured. In the terms of use, we also highlight the need for supervisor approval. So if a staff member is going to be making a request for a school or referring this out, then they would definitely need to make sure the supervisor is aware. So again, these are things I'll be sharing as I go around, making sure people know how to use the tool. And if you'll notice, I mentioned before in the tool, if the organization is accepting partners, it's noted green. And if they're not, it's noted red. We still wanted their information and to know that they're out there because things could change, their status could change. But that's also an indicator, and we want to make sure that our staff is aware that if it's marked red, then please don't contact that group. And then there are a few notes just making sure they're aware that this doesn't guarantee that the service will be provided, but they're open to you inquiring. So we can't guarantee partnership. And for further vetting, just making sure that when you reach out, giving us the feedback. If things go well, definitely let us know that. We can celebrate and continue to partner. So just making sure they know that that's kind of an open communication that we would need to be aware of. So I'll let you glance at those. And then it also kind of refers them to a few of our board policies so that they can make sure they keep those things in mind. And with those, as you can see, it has the plus marks. They can click to then read in more detail information about those policies.
Mr. Swanson, do you have a?
Oh, I was just talking.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know if you had a question for Dr. Sturdivant or not.
I'm already looking ahead at the map, and I know I'm going to need more of those flyers to hand out, because I know there are some people that want to be connected but aren't yet. And then I'm wondering if communications is planning on sending out some stuff that we can share on social media for folks.
We have shared it, and we can give you a toolkit.
I know you have shared it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, as mentioned, if you continue past the terms of use, you'll see the blue banner. That's where you'll click to actually access the map. And so, once I analyzed it, at that point we were at 34. As of today, we have about 37 submissions. So we're definitely gaining a little momentum and traction. So I definitely appreciate you all continuing to spread the word as she's suggesting. I also have featured here on this particular slide the legend. So that kind of gives you the codes for how to read the map. I mentioned the yellow and the red color for yes, they're accepting, or no, they're not. We also have an icon for public libraries, so one specific partnership so that schools can kind of know here's the closest library to your facility. They definitely wanted to be featured on the map, and we were able to give them their own icon, which was pretty awesome. And we do have an icon for the schools, so just thinking about proximity and where the schools are located. If you hover over those markers, then details will pop up. So looking at this particular slide, this just kind of shows a few of the municipalities that have organizations already featured. And this doesn't necessarily mean that they only serve that area. This is just showing that that organization is located in that particular area. So looking at their submission will alert you as to whether or not they serve the whole county or a specific area. But currently we have about 22 entries from Raleigh or in the Raleigh area. Apex and Wake Forest have 2 entries, and then followed by Cary, Knightdale, Morrisville, Wendell, and Zebulon. Each have 1. So we definitely need to keep spreading the word. It's still fairly new, so and this will be ongoing. We'll just continue to accept submissions. It's not like we have a deadline or it's going to close. So ongoing. Anytime you run into anyone, just continue to share it.
Do you have time for a question?
That's fine.
Mr. Swanson?
Thank you. And thanks, this has been very insightful. I'm looking forward to getting through the rest of the presentation. But just I know that typically folks may not watch our committee meetings, but want to get engaged. So it's a way for that beautiful poster that is behind us to be presented at, as folks walk into board meetings on Tuesdays, where we generally see a crowd of folks that may not be able to engage in a committee meeting, they could, scan, learn more about it, and potentially put their new website or their engagement on this map. Because I'm pretty confident there's more folks in Cary and Apex and Morrisville that will be willing to get engaged, but it's just how do we get the information to them beyond this particular setting?
Or one of these on the front office.
I got you. I got an empty sign, that holder that needs a sign in it. So.
That way it can stay there,
Yeah.
throughout the entire year.
And how many times have you walked into a school and you'll see maybe flyers or cards from some group that's partnering with the school? So they're visiting the schools and they're there, but they haven't found their way into the system yet. And so just even something as simple as having that in the office can be a good first point of first contact. I know 4 of those groups are just ones that I personally handed a flyer to, right? But we can't go door to door to the whole county.
Right. So I know the Rotary clubs are very active and engaging. I know the Cary Rotary clubs are key in a lot of the schools here in Cary, but they're not on the map. So that'll be a conversation I'll have with Bill Fletcher about making sure that we get those folks engaged as well.
Awesome. And that's definitely what we want, as many people spreading the word, and like you said, handing out the flyer. And I'm actually going to all of the upcoming principals meetings to do the choice sessions, so I'll have flyers for them to then take back to their schools. So just still working our rounds, making our rounds. So we do have more flyers coming out now.
Choose your size.
Thank you.
So yes, we have the smaller slides and the larger, so you can help us pass those out. And continue to look at what we already have submitted. They are able to indicate what type of organization they are, so this just kind of shows that the majority of our submissions have been the nonprofits, which is what we definitely want. Any free goods and services, we want to be aware of those. So we have 24 nonprofits who've submitted. 2 of them are religious organizations. And then we have private foundations who've also submitted about 3 of those. And we do have a category for other, just in case a group didn't fall under those. And some of those include like county agencies, a partnership or specific work from our community college system, specifically to like career services support. A local reentry council also submitted their information. So those are just a few that fall under the other category. So again, it is, people are getting the word, people are submitting, we just need to continue to work at that part. This next slide shows the services offered. So I'll definitely try to keep a pulse on that, because that'll let us know, oh, we really need more representation from a specific service that we might know we have a need of. So this just kind of highlights some of those. We have a lot for professional development and training. 10 organizations said that they actually offer that. Career and workforce development, we had about 9 organizations, even SEL and mentoring. So 9 organizations said they offer that. Health and wellness, 8 organizations. Recreation opportunities, we have 7. And then equity and social justice, there are 6. So those are kind of some of the highest ranking ones, and then you can see the others there. And on the submission form, they're able to indicate as many of these categories as are applicable. So they can choose all that apply. And then from there, I just kind of analyze how many say they offer what. So again, this will help us see, oh, we really need more support for whatever category. So one way I've been spreading the word is taking opportunities to go to community events. So that's another way that you could help. If there are events in your area, then I'm definitely open to coming to those. So any invitation, even if I have 3 minutes on the agenda, just to tell them what it is, maybe submit the slides so that you can project the flyer. I'm definitely open to those opportunities because I think if people can hear what it's about, know the benefits, then they're more apt to submit their information. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. This just features some of the meetings that I've already attended. I have a good relationship with the Crosby Advocacy Group, the Community Cares Collaborative, which is through wake.gov. So again, people are hearing about it and they're like, oh, can you come actually talk to our group? So definitely open to more opportunities like that. And as mentioned, I'll be sharing with principals and assistant principals in the upcoming meetings during the choice sessions. And then I'll also I'm already scheduled to share with the middle school counseling group. So I'm definitely trying to get on the schedule with our counseling and student services department to make sure social workers and counselors know how to access it at the school level. Any additional questions, thoughts?
You know, opportunities like this to get the information out, I know are always in high demand. We also don't want to flood your office with like every community festival or tabling opportunity we get. If there is something, though, that we think could be like an event or a group maybe with an event, with something coming up that you would think would be appropriate, should we contact you directly? Is there someone on your staff we should reach out to?
You can send those invitations to me directly. I do have the community partnerships inbox or directly to my actual email.
All right, great. Thank you.
Definitely appreciate it. Thank you. One more slide. If you don't have flyers in hand, you can simply mention that it's available on our website. So if you're just talking to someone, you don't have the flyers in hand, you can direct them to our district website under the Communities tab. That's also a way for organizations to access the form. So if you don't have flyers in hand, they can go straight to our website. All right. Thank you much.
Future one. Yeah, we were just talking up here. We've had obviously these presentations in committee, we've talked about it in work session, but we get more attention in our board meetings. Maybe sometime coming up toward the end of the year, we could do an information item, or maybe at the beginning of the year. We started off January talking about our mentoring programs, inviting a lot of people to come and participate. Maybe January would be another good time to put this in a board meeting as an information item, just to draw more attention as people are coming out of the holidays and the break between semesters.
And the target date is in January 2025?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Got it captured.
We have a question from Ms. Caulfield.
I was just curious, how do we work with, I know it's community partnerships, but if we find that something is going on with the towns and stuff like that, how does that work? Do we wait for them to come to us and fill it out? Do we seek out and say, hey, can we have the information so we can share it with our community? How does that work?
So we have been asking town services to be listed as that's one of those other categories, or when they want to advertise a specific town service. We have included it in our recent presentations with staff, but town staff, we've only actually had one town council meeting since we launched the map. So I think it's definitely a good idea for us to circle back to towns to give that reminder. That's a really good idea.
You could also advertise things for us that, parents may have missed in the principal announcement or whatever, just more information to that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
And clearly, we have more partnerships than are listed in here, right? Long-standing relations like Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, and others that just haven't put their information in here yet. They already have a partnership, but the more we can build the database, the better for staff, because they can have that direct access to it. Isn't that
Right, and this also gives us an opportunity to communicate out, because we'll then have a running list of all of those email addresses, the key contact. So anytime we're communicating various announcements beyond families and parents, community partners sometimes want those updates as well.
Mr. Swanson?
If I could, thank you, Mr. Chair, and if I could add one other thing. just going back to my time as a special education teacher in those IEP meetings, oftentimes there are opportunities for students to build out, community service skills or whatnot. So if we could also be strategic of including programs that are geared towards our students with special education, that way it can at least help with certain goals that special education teachers are laying out. That would be extremely helpful.
Great. Dr. Ed?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of the same vein. I mean, there are organizations, nonprofits that are specialized in certain, disability diagnoses, and the ARC of North Carolina, or there are various organizations that could be useful for our families to be plugged in with some of those organizations.
Very good. Ms. Caulfield?
And that was kind of along the lines of what I was saying, and thank you for raising the special education piece, but like mental health is a big thing for us. And I know, like I've said a couple of times in the last, just to remind the families that, well, Wendell I know is doing one, and the town of Wake Forest is doing one, and we work with Wake Med all the time, so to have all that stuff available for families, it's just all together, it works for us to communicate.
All right, well, we appreciate the update. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Robinson?
Yes, so we're now going to transition to the Panorama Family School Relationship Survey results, and that will be Dr. Kim Burton and Dr. Leanne Overkey.
All right, welcome, Dr. Burton.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me, Board, Superintendent Taylor, and other staff. I am pleased to be here this afternoon to talk about our Family Partnership Survey results, because we know our familial voice matters, and so we're pleased to work in a district that lifts up that work at such a high level, so all our families feel welcomed and want to feel heard. So we'll start with just thinking about our WCPSS response rates over time. And so you see on this slide, it depicts the district-wide total for a variety of years, bringing us down to 2024. And what this slide denotes is district-wide, and you will also see it broken down between Title I school family responses and non-Title I school responses. And so we are pleased to see that we are seeing upward mobility in the number of survey increases overall. But the point that we want to highlight and share with this particular slide is that when we look at our Title I funded schools, which is the red line there, our Title I schools have seen the highest increase in our survey responses dating back to pre-pandemic. So we're really proud of that work in being able to hear all of our family voices, but certainly in some of our communities that are a bit more vulnerable, we've seen positive increases, again, going back to pre-pandemic results. So that's something that we wanted you to know about this slide. So here, if we break down Title I responses, because you heard me just highlight that success with the number of increases going back to pre-pandemic, this particular slide highlights or breaks down for you the number of online surveys through the regular survey deployment from Panorama, but you also see here the number of paper surveys. And so if you look at even our 2024 results, our Title I responses, a little over 6,100 online, but then we had an additional a little over 5,500 surveys done on paper. So just as a share and what might be a reminder to some, Title I provides as a supplement to the district effort. The district as a standard deploys the survey to all families electronically. Title I provides a supplement to that standard via the paper surveys. And so we are really, really pleased that we can see that that effort is bringing positive results. And the numbers tell the story here. With us being able to hear from more families, the kind of the overarching rationale for the paper surveys are a number of reasons, but one is sometimes in some of our most vulnerable communities, our families are very transient, phone numbers change, email addresses change, and so we found that giving the paper survey as a supplement that can go home with the child in the backpack or in a Monday folder gives that family access that they otherwise would not have if at the time the district pulled the data for this electronic deployment, that number was no longer valid or email address. And so we're seeing success with that. We also want to share that one of the reasons we believe the paper surveys are also really successful is because we work with our folks in our testing department and to give us demographics on which are the most number of families speaking a certain language at a particular school. And we work to make sure that our schools have paper surveys in that native language. That's been really, really huge. As you can see here from the paper survey responses that add to the online response. Just for context, the Panorama survey itself does have the option for families to select the electronic survey in its native language. Oftentimes, I think that's missed. It is on that landing page, the first thing that families see when they go to complete the survey, but they have to actually select the native language, and many times that does not happen. And so we work to, again, if a particular school has a large number of families that need the survey in language, we work and provide the number of surveys in a particular language to those families. So again, their voices may be heard and they're able to have the access that they need to complete the survey. So, results over time. In this particular slide, you can see that there's school climate, there are barriers to engagement, and then you see this, this whole bucket, Title I, in the yellow line. So the survey itself has questions related to school climate. There are questions related to barriers to engagement. And then you see this yellow bar. And so the yellow bar are specific questions for Title I funded schools. If you look at this, you're probably thinking, well, the yellow bar is a little bit lower than the other bars, school climate and barriers to engagement. And we have a couple of theories as to why that might exist, because we've noted that there's been an increase in the survey that's been positive. But one of the things that I can tell you about these questions that are just for families that are in Title I funded schools, the first thing that we'll note is the Title I questions come at the end of the survey. Family goes through the survey, and then they say, if your child is attending a Title I funded school, then here are these questions. There are only 3 of them. There are not a lot of questions, but they do appear at the end of the survey. The law requires that Title I, the Title I department surveys families annually, and that we have to ask these 3 questions. The other thing is that the questions themselves can tend to be a little bit lengthy and jargony, right? So the question might be, do families really even understand what all of that jargon means? But these are, again, required questions from the federal government that we must include in the annual survey. When we think about the impact of the work on these questions, I will tell you one of the questions is around whether the required homeschool compact for Title I funded schools reminds me of things I can do to help my child at home, right? That's one question, a little jargon in there. The second question is, I've been invited to participate in school planning, such as the school improvement plan, the Title I plan, and the family engagement policy, etc. Third question, I feel knowledgeable about our school status as a Title I school-wide program school. So when we think about these questions in relationship to families really answering questions around school climate, Barriers to engagement, the impact on the work, there's such a variance between the highs and the lows in that response. And our families are answering the school climate questions and the barriers to engagement. And we think that those questions are probably a little more important to them than responding to these questions that tend to be a little jargony. The last point I'll make about the Title I questions that are required is that the Title I questions point to more of compliance for us. Again, you've heard me communicate, they are required, we must ask these questions. And so that really is about compliance and our families answering the survey in relationship to school climate and barriers to engagement. Those are more about commitment to our work, right? And so our families, we think that our schools use the answers and responses they get from school climate and barriers to engagement to really influence and move actionable work forward, because it's one thing to have the data, but it's another thing to have our schools really unpack that data and use that data to drive us into action. So I think we're now going to kind of break down for you a little bit more about the school climate and the barriers to engagement questions so that can help deepen your understanding about those questions on the survey. Leanne?
So here you see some examples of some of those questions. They are all Likert scale questions, and so you see the sample responses: not a problem, small problem, medium problem, large problem, very large problem. The model that Panorama uses is that the first two are what gives you a positive response, and the bottom three is considered a negative response. And so when they're answering the barriers to engagement survey questions, they're looking at how big of a problem are these issues for them as a family and being involved in their child's schools. And so you see some examples of these here. But, you know, barriers is interesting because when they're giving a positive response, they're saying that something is not a barrier for them. And so some examples of those are transportation challenges, knowing how to communicate with the school, feeling a sense of belonging within the school, and then a very interesting one, concern that adults in the school will not treat your child fairly if you raise a concern. And so it's very interesting to look at those responses as well. But with that barriers to engagement, we get a positive response because they're communicating it's not a problem for them. And even medium problem is considered to be a negative response. And then when you see school climate questions, this is measuring families' perceptions of overall school climate. Again, it's a Likert scale, strongly agree to strongly disagree, with statements such as how much does your child enjoy going to school, how motivating are the classroom lessons, how much does the school value the diversity of children's backgrounds, how well does staff create environments to help children learn, overall how much respect do you think teachers have at your child's school for the children. So those, again, are Likert scale questions, and only agree or strongly agree are reported as positive responses. Even somewhat agree is reported as negative according to their survey methodology. And then here are the Title I questions that Dr. Burton was just detailing to you, that issue of compliance versus commitment. So when you look at these questions, you can really see how barriers to engagement, school climate are more focused on commitment and the data that we really want our school leaders and teachers to be digging into. And so then you see, again, just circling back to results over time, now that you know more about what those questions are measuring, we have seen improvement overall on barriers to engagement as well as school climate, but of course we're still not where we want to be with our goals. And of course, there's the percent favorable on the Title I, which Dr. Burton was just detailing, lower than the others, but has still improved over the time that we've been giving the survey. And so now we can dig into how it compares to our strategic plan goal 6 of 95% of families indicating low barriers to engagement and positive school climate. So you see here that we did go up slightly in the climate and stayed pretty steady in the percent favorable on the engagement measure from 23 to 24 when we had that baseline, and you see that we did increase responses, which was another, not part of the stated goal, but certainly part of our goal. And the work is making sure that we're hearing from more families and then also getting more positive results. So we did hear from 3,000 more families last year. This is how that breaks down in demographics of groups from the student population versus how it compares to overall Wake County student population. So you can see that we don't see the gaps that we see in other places in this data point, but we do see some small gaps in the way that families are, the percentage of families that are responding by a group as compared to the percent of the student population that they represent in Wake County. Go ahead.
No, I'm trying to make sure I understand how
Sure.
you're phrasing this.
Yes.
So of this, is it 46% on that first line of the respondents were white?
Yes.
Okay, and then is the other one, I'm trying to understand
Percent of the student population.
Yeah.
So 42% of our student population is white.
I see.
46% of the survey respondents are
Understood.
white. So a
Okay.
disproportionality of 4%
Okay.
there. Now, this is all a little bit fuzzy because we know that some children will have 4 family members who may respond to the survey, and sometimes a family member will respond on behalf of 4 children. Right? So you could have either situation. So we just look at it as proportions and ratios. We also know that every parent is not the same group or race as their child. And when we are asking them to report, we're asking them to report their child's race, but that doesn't mean that the parent is of the same race. So in those things, we just look at them as ratios and proportions, and we want it to be as close as possible. So when we say that 36%, that's about 23% of students, but it's not a one-to-one correlation. Generally, we want to make this as easy on families as possible, so we ask families to respond once per school that your child goes to, but once again, some families may have 4 children in one school, and some families may have 4 children in 3 schools, and we want their feedback in whatever way they want to provide it, so we know that we just want to look at whether those ratios are in line with one another, but it's not one-to-one correspondence. And so then you see how it appears in responses. Again, at Title I and not Title I, we have received feedback from our school staff that Dr. Burton was talking about the importance of the supplement of the paper survey. And we see that in the way that it pans out in this data, as well as we know that our students of color are more likely to be attending a Title I school, but their voices are quite representative in the responses to the survey, so we feel really good about that. And you can see, once again, there are some places where there are small gaps, but we do not see the gaps in the family responses that we see when we look at other data points. So that's just looking at a few things there to be able to show you how it relates to the second portion of that goal of eliminating disparities. And so that is our last slide, except we want to be able to dig in to the results and answer any questions that you have. There is a dashboard that's available in the assembly materials that shows district reports, as well as a copy of the survey and a report that Panorama has generated for us for each of your districts as well.
All right, questions for either, go ahead, Dr. Ray.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, when you have these questions, like on slide 18 and slide 19, when you're talking about these questions and the examples that you had mentioned, are those the actual questions, or these, I'm not quite sure, is it one question, or is it multiple questions?
It's multiple questions.
Okay.
Yes, it's multiple questions. So, and there is a copy of that survey on that dashboard, but it looks like a table where they're saying this thing is a problem, this thing is not a problem. So they could answer, for example, childcare is not a problem, but transportation is.
Right.
Like, they would be able to provide that answer. Yep, they're individual.
And just a quick follow-up on that. When you're looking and reporting back on response rates, you saw those Title I responses for
Yep.
lower rates. What constitutes a response? Is it number of families who answer even one of the 3 questions? Or is the percentage based on response to all questions asked? So if you get an incomplete survey, it doesn't count as 100% for that family?
They use a 50% threshold.
Okay.
So it's counted as a response if they answer half the questions.
So if they answer just one of those 3 questions, they might have turned it in, but it would
Correct.
not be counted as a response on that Title I.
Correct. Yes, for Title I, we would be looking for 2 out of 3 questions to be answered in that section.
And I would add to Dr. Alfred Keefe's response that though the response was lower for Title I funded schools on those 3 questions, the data tells us that the responses on the other areas, barriers to engagement
Yes.
or climate, we can see that in some cases, Title I responses exceeded non-Title I schools. So where our Title I funded schools fell just a little short was just with those 3 questions that were Title I specific, not the overall survey.
And so, Dr. Burton, your speculation as to the complexity and the wording of some of those questions may have really impacted their completion.
Yes, and interestingly enough,
Really ironic coming from Title I and the work that they have to do, but
so interestingly enough, the 3 questions at the beginning of the year as part of our federal requirements for all of our Title I funded schools, we provide information, a slide deck to all of our school leaders to inform our families that we are a Title I funded school-wide program. We are required to work with our families to build that homeschool compact and policy for the schools. But again, the work that we do with families day to day in real time in the buildings and in the community and working with our families are around the other 2 buckets of questions. We don't generally help our school leaders with a regurgitated response to inform families that they're required to participate in school improvement planning. We use the data to work with families around the other 2 big buckets, which is why we're seeing awesome results around those 2 big buckets.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Mr. Swanson.
So I think my question is very similar to the 2. Just looking at you had referenced, Dr. Burton, about the jargon, maybe a little too complex for these families. Do we have wiggle room to state what the federal mandates are, but then maybe do a little asterisk that says this question simply is asking A, B, C, D, so therefore we can, number 1, improve the responses, but also meeting our families where they are, in addition, like a both-and scenario?
Awesome question. And so we have the wonderful opportunity to work with the survey vendor to help create what it is we need and what we want. So it could be possible to add some of that language to help our families really understand what that means, to help with some of the jargon. We do not have the flexibility to change the questions. They are federally mandated. And so those questions will remain, but I certainly see your point in maybe doing something around helping families to unpack those very jargony questions.
Oh, follow up.
Second question, if I may.
Yep.
And then just looking at the data, how, yes, I'm grateful to see the paper being a key component of this, but I think we often neglect that piece. Assume that everyone wants technology, but you have a bit, it's 50-50, I guess.
Yeah.
But the piece I wanted to really flesh out a little bit is how do we work with our school improvement teams? Because I remember my time serving on the school improvement team at Inland. I looked over at Dr. Chavis just because I know family engagement, and engagement was one of those pieces that every school thrives on. So how do we make sure that the pieces that are laid out in our strategic plan is embedded in their school improvement plans?
Awesome. So Leanne, if you'll address the first part of that, and then I'll address the supplement because Title I does something in addition to the standard.
Yes, perfect. So our area senior administrators who coach all of our school improvement teams are provided professional learning around this survey, just as they are all the other data points, and they have incorporated it into the data review process so that schools are looking at this data just like they are their student survey, as well as their student outcome data, as well as their teacher working conditions survey, like all of those things. So that team does support that, and with that E106 family engagement indicator, like using this as the measure of it, and something that frequently they encourage schools to do, and school improvement teams would be the right group to do this, is to like unpack these results with families. So if, for example, they see a high rate of barriers of childcare, like what exactly does that mean? What time would be better? And seeking that feedback from their families and involving families and unpacking the results is how it's communicated as the best practice. But then, as Dr. Burton said, Title I schools do get a supplement in that area as well.
So you may be wondering if we're providing the paper surveys still, with all that our schools have to do, how are we still seeing success with just a distribution of another piece of paper that families have to see? One of the things that our Title I funded schools require is what we call a family and community engagement coordinator at the school. Just a position, just something, a title for someone at the school who is passionate about this work. Because being a former school administrator, I can tell you that, you know, you do need thought partners, you do need folks to help execute the work, that it does not all fall on the school leader's shoulder. And so we require our Title I funded schools to have a person at the school who can really help move this work along. And so part of the responsibility of that school coordinator is to ensure that there is an approach and a method to distributing the surveys. We even work with our Title I funded schools to say, hey, what are your kids like? How, you know, what is it if kids return the survey? What can we do to incentivize, you know, our kids returning the surveys? And so we work with our schools in that regard. Just the whole marketing strategy around the surveys. The coordinator really helps the school leader with that. And then Panorama, the vendor who has helped us with this work previously, has been real instrumental in helping with that piece, because Title I, as a supplement, we've been able to offer professional learning to our schools regarding the unpacking of the survey. So you heard me reference earlier that we need to use the data to move action forward, and that's very helpful when school leaders and school teams understand what the questions mean, how to utilize this data, and have an opportunity to brainstorm ideas around what challenges the data may be illuminating. The other thing that I've seen in many schools in relationship to school improvement and that E106 indicator is that our schools have learned more, they want to do this work well, and so in many cases, our school improvement teams have family and community engagement committees as part of their school improvement team. So all efforts that can help support getting the best response from families that we want to see.
And if I may just flesh out just a little bit of that, and thank you both for going into great details about this. So then those parents and student reps, are they then responsible, or do they understand that their role is to help increase that engagement with their families and peers so we can use that data to help improve our operational effectiveness?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's certainly what we work towards. The support in Title I is over and above it, is supplemented over what is available for the other schools. So just to speak a little bit about what is available to survey reps for all schools, are webinars that are recorded, communication from Panorama with a toolkit that Panorama worked with our comms team to build of signage and QR codes and advertising. But it is like what we see with some of our other areas. It's an extra duty position in Title I. It's not an extra duty position in a non-Title I school. So, you know, the bandwidth may not be the same in a non-Title I school without that supplement, but they do have webinars and toolkits that are provided so that they can do that with as low barrier to entry as possible.
So to clarify, an extra duty, but not an extra duty because it's not a paid. When we typically say extra duty,
good call.
We think paid positions, and I want to be clear. We have just messaged to our Title I funded schools that in addition to this work being the right work to do, for all the reasons that we know it is, we want someone in the school who's just really passionate about it, who has the time to dedicate to help the school leader do this work, but it is not an extra duty position in terms of a paid position.
Yeah.
Nobody's getting paid extra to do the work.
Anything else, Dr. Mr. Swanson?
That'll work for now. Thank you. I have some others, but I'll reach out. I don't want to take up too much time, but I can reach out to both of you all.
And I keep wanting to give you that promotion to your doctorate. That's always nice. Dr. Ng.
I was looking at the Title I questions, and I agree. I mean, some of it is kind of jargony, and even that, the questions by themselves will make it harder for some people to actually really understand what they're answering, you know. So I think some efforts to clarify that somehow, or even have precursor questions that help to kind of get people's minds thinking about what this means, and then get to those questions that you are obligated to answer, then that may be a way to get to the crux of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of that conflict between you don't want to coach them toward an answer, but you want to be able to provide clear examples or
Right.
explain
Right.
what some of those things mean. Because
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
just approach that with no context.
Right. I mean, like question 3, I feel knowledgeable about our school's status as a Title I school-wide program school. Obviously, you don't want to be like explaining what that is and then ask them to answer that question. You know?
Absolutely. And our families have shared in the past that the survey was too long previously, so efforts were made to reduce it. So we're really sensitive, if you will, with adding too much there, because these questions already come at the end, and so then having them read too much, will that have the perception for families that it's still a lengthy survey? You're giving me so much more to read. One of the things that I think our office can do is, again, at the beginning of the year, per federal requirement, we work with schools on all of those beginning of the year things and making sure that we're communicating well with families what those requirements are. And this might be something that we add to those beginning of the year efforts through our slide decks for our schools to use at that very first annual parent meeting that is required in Title I funded schools. And that may help families understand that question. Therefore, when they take the survey that year, then it may not seem so foreign to them what that question is about. That's true. So, thank you for that.
Any further questions for Dr. Burton or Dr. Alfred Keith?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very
Pushing
much.
this from last time.
Thank you for having us back.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
Well, Dr. Robinson, that comes to the end of the printed agenda that I have. Is there anything else coming up that you'd like to forecast or?
Absolutely, and just so that we can just briefly talk about it, some of the forecasting for our next meeting was going to include reaching out to the Boys and Girls Club and various other organizations with regards to the work that we're doing. We're also trying to reach out to some of the Hispanic and Latinx organizations to bring them to the forefront, very similar to what we did for the HBCUs and the Divine Nine that came through and really talked about their work in their Greek organizations. But that is the forecast. Those are the things that are going to be coming forward. And if there's anything that you would like us to bring forward, we are more than willing to do so.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, and I know that our committee chair does as well. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much. We appreciate it. We'll go ahead and call this committee meeting closed.
Yes. Thank you.